a little strange, right?
At some
Like,
point,
this is very clear that like I'm wondering like is there a third attempt, and does attempt number 3 involve something other than a rifle this time?
does the third attempt even target him, or does it just target the American people? If you've tried twice to remove him from the chessboard, why don't you just flip the table and destroy the chessboard? Just kick off World War III, and then
I want to get on a list right now.
The Azov Battalion is the guys in Ukraine that will fly the Ukrainian flag mixed with the swastika.
Oh,
and that sends
concerning.
you.
Did I read something about like a
Dude,
weapon of mass destruction?
So
or
the
something?
one
On to the news.
So we got a little news segment today called the Devil's What did you call it?
The news.
The news.
Devil's Triangle edition.
Devil's Triangle edition. Today we're going to be covering, you know what?
My nipples.
The shooter, Shooter McGavin, the non-shooter, the potential shooter, the alleged shooter. What are they calling it in the news?
I don't know.
There's a word that they use.
Wild.
The spin is it was
Yeah,
like the
yeah.
alleged Trump. And I'm like, what alleged is there? He's on the golf course with a f***ing gun,
Right.
with ammunition,
Right.
and with some semblance of body armor.
Dude, Trump to electric boogaloo, motherfucker.
Jesus Christ,
CNN
man.
used
It's
the
not
same
alleged.
They used the same phrase when he was shot in the ear / that's the face. Your
Yeah.
ear is part of your face. He got shot in the face. They used the same verbiage on that they did with this,
know
where
what
it
the word
was
was.
there were shots fired
Yeah.
in the vicinity
Yeah.
of Trump. Like,
Yeah,
come
yeah.
on,
Come
man.
on.
Come on. Like,
It is the word that they're using is apparent. The apparent attempt.
as
it wasn't
we have
alleged.
been told.
Yeah, it is apparent. It's pretty apparent. An
Yeah.
AK-47 on a golf course with a former president and some body armor.
Yeah.
Probably. That is.
I haven't looked
apparent.
into it enough. Is it an AK or is it an SKS?
It's
an
a-
AKM.
It's an AK. Yeah.
It's an AKM.
oh.
The interesting thing though is the body
So
armor.
we don't necessarily know
They
exactly.
keep
what it was
reporting the
chambered in.
body armor as
They're
ceramic
backpacks with
plates.
ceramics, yeah.
But I think the way that they keep saying it, they're making it sound like he went and got like bathroom tiles and like put them in his backpack.
They say ceramic tiles,
Yeah,
but I don't know
yeah.
if they're like actual
know.
like ballistic ceramic tiles,
I
like alumina
immediately wanna
oxide
test
ceramic
that,
tiles,
though.
or if he
'Cause
went
they
to
would do
fucking Home
nothing.
Depot and he was like, "Yeah, what do you got in octagon baby blue?"
I think that's what he did. I think he put like floor tiling in 2 backpacks and hung them on the
Not a
fence.
terrible idea.
I mean,
I wanna
it'll
test it.
stop
I
a
wanna
bullet.
see.
It'll stop a bullet.
Anyways, on to
Yeah, if
the
you stack
point
'em.
of
If you
this
stack 'em.
video.
On to the point of this video, yeah, we're going to try to keep it concise and give
Yeah,
you what
sorry.
we know right now. Do not stop watching this. I mean, you can stop watching this because eventually the video is going to end, but continue down your rabbit hole of investigation. Do not let them distract you with bread and circuses because they fucking will. They will stop talking about this. The media probably tomorrow, if not next week.
Oh, they're already blowing it off.
Oh, I
They're already
guarantee-
acting
I'm
like it's
already
a
not
thing.
talking about it.
Well, we haven't even started talking about it. So, what do you got?
Okay, so what do you want from me? You want like a quick down and dirty on this dude in his like last 20-ish years?
Let's
I
hit some
want to
key
know how
points.
BlackRock was affiliated with this. That's what I want to know.
So the BlackRock thing,
I want to get on a list right now.
the BlackRock thing may or may not be like an internet conspiracy. So there was a bunch of videos that were released that were showing him and the last attempted shooter in a BlackRock commercial, and it looks like I've been able to debunk that through the internet. The footage of him in like a commercial setting was by like some. It wasn't BlackRock related. It was a recruitment commercial for the Azov Battalion in Ukraine.
Okay.
And it looks like that footage came from like circa 2013 when he was in Ukraine. But that's also kind of odd because
I thought he was in Ukraine in 2020. 2020.
So
I'm sorry, in
both times.
2022. I thought he
both
was in
times.
Ukraine.
So he's gone to Ukraine twice.
In
The
2013 and in 2022?
yeah. So the first. So let's run through his
Background.
Since we're here, we'll address the Ukraine trips first, and then we'll like jump into his background real quick. So
name?
I didn't write his name down because I agree with Ben Shapiro's theory here that active shooters and attempts, what they want is publication of their name.
Okay.
So I don't want to. His first
You
name
guys
is
can
Ryan.
look it up if you want to know then.
He travels to Ukraine originally at the original invasion of Ukraine, the Crimea invasion. And what he actually did over there was he recruited Islamic extremists from Afghanistan and Iran to fight in the storied Azov Battalion against the Russians. It's just an interesting thing because how would you convince people from the Middle East to fight Russia? Right, it's kind of an odd thing, and it makes you look into the Azov Battalion a little bit, which is not a. The Azov Battalion is the guys in Ukraine that will fly the Ukrainian flag mixed with the swastika.
Oh,
and that sends
concerning.
that sends you down a whole rabbit hole of post-World War II, where we sent all of the high-ranking Nazis that were arrested and tried in the Nuremberg trials. They were run out of Germany, and a lot of them landed in northern Ukraine.
And Belarus.
Their children would kind of become the Azov Battalion. All of that is kind of like shady internet knowledge, and it's a whole rabbit hole to go down yourself. But
Did they end up in Belarus as well, or was it just Ukraine?
I think kind of like all over that area.
Okay,
but there's
got
a
it.
lot of anti-Jewish sentiment over there amongst people that they're not Islamic extremists, right? Like, so it's just an odd thing that he was recruiting Islamic extremists into Ukrainian freedom fighters.
And that was
that is not to disparage.
That was right next to the river in Crimea.
Yeah. But I want to say, like, that I don't think that's to disparage people, because he was recruiting people for the Legion, and I think that there's a lot of good Western volunteers over there in the Legion. It's just an odd rabbit hole to go down. Why was this guy in Ukraine recruiting Islamic extremists into the Ukraine-Russia fight circa 2014-ish? That's weird.
Yeah,
He is back in 2022. He went back over after the Russian invasion and attempted to volunteer as a fighter. And that is where that interview comes from, where he says he's 54 years old and his hair is like colored multiple different colors. And he's sitting there. He's been interviewed by the Romanian Newsweek. He went over to volunteer as a fighter, and the Legion, the Ukrainian volunteers,
They said he was too old.
Yeah, you're too old. That is his kind of interactions with Ukraine. I don't think any of that necessarily, I don't think it exposes anything other than a willingness to act and some like long-running mental illness and confusion on like geopolitics. He's just kind of all over the place, but willing to work. That being said, a deep dive on this guy. So his criminal history starts in the late 90s and runs all the way up to current. In the state of North Carolina itself, he has over 100 criminal court filings just in the state of North Carolina from then on.
Jiminy Christmas.
The ones that are worth note is a hit and run, possession of stolen goods. He was arrested with a concealed carry without having a concealed carry.
Did I read something about like a weapon of mass destruction?
So
or
the
something
one that
like
I want to the one that I want to cover specifically is in 2002. So this guy has 100 court filings, criminal court filings in North Carolina. They're for all kinds of stuff, but there's a handful of stuff that's like pretty extreme. Should have done prison time over. In 2002, he gets pulled over for a traffic violation.
Yeah.
While the cop is talking to him, he exposes his concealed carry and puts his hand on it and takes off. The cops, it's a pursuit then. He barricades himself at his office, which I had a hard time proving whether or not he owned the construction company or just worked there. But he barricaded himself for several hours inside of a construction company that he worked for or owned. And when they were able to talk him out of it, he was arrested for the concealed carry weapon that he, again, was not allowed to possess, which should have been a 3 to 5 year minimum sentencing right then and there. Should have been in prison. But he also had an illegal full auto machine gun.
Should it have been a 3 to 5?
Should have been a. Yeah, however you say it. But he
based on state law.
It's
not based on
According to the law.
according to the law. And I just want to clarify that that's not you thinking he should have been. Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean according to the law, like
Okay,
it's a mandatory. Like you have an illegal firearm, like there's mandatory prison sentences, like there's federal and state requirements.
We just wanted
that he
taken out of context because someone's going to grab that clip and say that you're a proponent for gun control. Okay. But he had a fully automatic what?
So he had the weapon of mass destruction charge that he got in 2002, which is wild that is a phrase.
So you're telling me George W. Bush would have sent the U.S. military after
I'm
this guy.
saying that they were right. There was weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. There was all kinds of machine guns there, right? Like, but that charge, like he was arrested for the second time on a weapons charge, and he got arrested for having a illegal machine gun. And this is after an armed standoff with police. I don't understand how this dude got a gun, right? Because firearms laws, right? So he's a convicted felon times a handful. He's definitely not allowed to own a gun, and yet here we sit. He had ceramic plates maybe from Home Depot and an AK with an optic on it. And he was 400 or 500 yards from where Trump was. He was 2 holes ahead of him. And the way that he hung his backpacks full of ballistic plates on the fence is what gave him away to Secret Service. They noticed it on the fence and went to investigate, and he already had his muzzle through the fence waiting for Trump to like make
Come
the
around the
turn on
corner.
the golf course. But he was spitting distance from the green. So he was waiting for Trump to get to the green that he was at, and he would have been within 100 yards. I mean, the fence line is right on the green.
Damn.
He was not a professional with what he was doing as far as being sneaky. But
let me just hang some body armor on the fence. They won't notice.
yeah, I think the biggest, most interesting thing to come out of all of this stuff is that, I mean, obviously there's the great gotcha moment that this guy has an extensive criminal history and yet still managed to get his hands on a firearm. So gun control laws don't work, obviously, but I think the most interesting part about this is that none of Trump's movements were published. It was a relaxing day off on the golf course. The Secret Service and the local sheriff have both said that they don't understand how this guy even knew that he was going to be there. So they're from the people around Trump and kind of official sources. I mean, The sheriff for the area flat out said that he believes that this is a deeper conspiracy with more people involved, strictly because how did that guy even know where to go, at what time to be there, where Trump would be?
Yeah.
It's too perfect.
It's way too perfect.
And it's too perfect times 2.
Yep.
The last one was just...
Sounds like a useful idiot that they were like, hey, this guy's
Yep.
pretty insane.
Yeah.
And I think he'll do our bidding.
I totally agree. So, I mean, that's kind of my deep dive background on this guy. I could keep going, but I feel like that's kind of all the
If you
pertinent
weren't
stuff.
going to vote for Donald Trump, like, wouldn't you just do it out of curiosity at this point? Because, like, what does he know that they don't want him to tell?
It's a good point.
It's a little strange, right?
At some
Like,
point,
this is very clear that, like, I'm wondering, like, is there a third attempt, and does attempt number 3 involve something other than a rifle this time?
does the third attempt even target him, or does it just target the American people? If you've tried twice to remove him from the chessboard, why don't you just flip the table and destroy the chessboard? Just kick off World War III, and then what are we talking about anymore?
Right.
You know. And like we're just getting closer and closer to that. When you look at when you look at like shady things that the U.S. government and the military gets involved in, like the pipeline that got blown up, that pretty blatantly was the United States government.
Right.
If it wasn't directly us, we assisted in that happening in some way. Like, what's to say that we wouldn't detonate a suitcase nuke somewhere? What's to say that we wouldn't push that ball down the road in order to maintain our power here? They've taken, the powers that be have taken 2 shots at the man at this point. What's the third?
I was talking with Tackett about this earlier as we were kind of discussing it. It's very curious that the so-called gun crazy right, the gun crazed right, has not been the side to take 2 assassination attempts towards the.
Nor have they been the ones primarily doing the school shooting.
That is not to encourage anything. Let us be clear. It is just pointing out something strange.
We are not saying now is your time.
No, it's a pat on our back as a community. Is that like the more that this fight continues to get dirty, the cleaner we are. You know, like the more that we're saying, like we're the entire 2A community is all rallied behind an effort to get the vote out. The voteforamerica.org. It's an organized effort to get people to vote, to take a friend to go vote with you. Like it's a challenge being issued out into the conservative community, while as our opponents are doing this. Or setting themselves on fire. There was another guy that set himself on fire on 9/11 that was completely not covered by the media. Which makes 3 people since December of 2023 until September of 2024, 3 American citizens have set themselves on fire in protest of the Israeli conflict in Gaza.
Right. One of them was in the Air Force, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant move.
Which is kind of wild because when you read their statements or the statements of the shooters that are going after Trump, everyone is seeing the same. You know that old adage about religion is just touching a different part of the elephant and we're describing it differently?
Right.
When you read their statements about why they're setting themselves on fire or why they're going after the president, it is all because of the defense contractors and the corruption within the military and how the government isn't the friend of the people anymore. So like they're touching the right elephant. They're just describing it in a weird way. They're picking a weird enemy of the people, you know? It's just interesting. The average American can see that the government is not our friend anymore. Right. It's just the solution to that problem. Everyone is buying a different solution.
Right.
Eventually, I think we're all going to see the same solution. I think eventually the mask slips here.
Do you guys have some level of hypothesis as to what is happening here?
Full conspiracy rabbit hole. It's, to me, I mean, it just, the CIA confirmed MK Ultra. We know that they've been doing dabblings with just everything immoral and wrong. And we look at the deep state of government already as it is. And with the FBI connections between the previous shooter, it just make it make sense. Like if someone could sit down and make it make sense, that would be something different. But even when we get official releases from the White House, it doesn't make sense. Anything that they say, it never makes sense. It's a bunch of bullshit. They brush stuff off. Anytime a reporter is like, so how did he know the president was there? You'll hear something from the White House like they didn't know that Trump was there.
Yeah, it's just a PR
It's
spin.
like, what? He literally shot at Trump. And it's like, no, he didn't know that he was there.
The thing that's blowing my
He was
mind,
just hoping that he would be there.
the thing that's blowing my mind with all of this, and you can go back to like January 6th and kind of include that in this too, is I have grown up in the United States with this belief that like, if you parked your car and like jumped over the fence of the White House and made a run for the White House, that there would be like rocket launchers that popped out of the bushes, and like that would be it. You'd make it 10 feet, and something would just mercilessly
You'd hit an
murder.
electric grid. And
Yeah, there'd be like a lion that came out of somewhere. You know what I mean? But like January 6th, there was basically nothing that protected the Capitol, and then there's a shot at Trump, and there's like I mean, it's just totally insane that guy was able to get within 100 yards on the only roof anywhere near him. Like, it's totally insane.
It is.
And then this guy, he self-published a book on Amazon that he sold. And in the book, he has a phrase that says, "You have a right to a Trump."
This guy.
Right. And
This dude.
It's a
On
published...
the most recent.
Yeah, it's a published book that he wrote, and it's for sale on Amazon. Like, if we're not looking into people like that as a threat, then what is the FBI doing? They're just looking at us.
Well, it just begs the
point.
question: if the FBI will repeat their line over and over again, which is, do you guys know the line?
That any one or more people that are gathering together in a training environment are terrorists?
Not that one. Not that one.
The actual terrorists are terrorists, though.
No, we had eyes on him. He was on our list.
Yep, say the line.
We were looking at him. We were watching for him, right? If the FBI
The
is,
same
right.
FBI that was looking at the Georgia school shooter from a year ago when he was actually
right,
yeah.
So like,
Okay.
so
but
like,
just decided to happen to go into
In-depth monitoring all the way up until the day of, and then they
up
have no
until
idea who
up until the
was.
point
Like,
where now we need some gun control rhetoric for the election. So we're just gonna kind of let him go through and get this thing done. Go ahead.
right. So I kind of want you guys to kind of think about this and examine this for a second. We have the Federal Bureau of Investigations, who has eyes and details on multiple shooters. They had it on the Crooks guy. I guarantee you they're going to come out with this guy and be like, oh, yeah, we were watching him. He was on our list, blah, blah, blah. They don't do anything. Now, to a degree, I agree with that because pre-crime. But we also have federal agencies that will arrest you for intent to assemble a firearm.
yeah.
So they have pre-crime in one direction, but they don't have pre-crime when it comes to somebody self-publishing a book on Amazon saying you have the right to Donald Trump.
With a
It's because
30-year
he's-
criminal history. I mean, it's a 30-year, like, unstable criminal history. It's crazy.
Well, I think it's because
crazy.
of his intent on the particular individual.
Right.
Obviously, if that
that's why-
wasn't the open quote right or correct close quote individual to be assassinated, then obviously more would be done. And just because I'm not saying you arrest somebody, but if they are an absolute threat to taking out the next leader of the free world, wouldn't you have a tail on the guy? Wouldn't you be like, hey, we just need to fucking follow this guy?
Well, name
Because-
another president in history that has come close to requiring the security detail. Like, when they fill out their, I'm sure that there's a government form, right? Because everything is red tape somewhere. When they're filling out, like, why do you think you need Secret Service? No one has as full of a paragraph as him. You know what I mean? Like, he has additional pages justifying why he needs Secret Service coverage.
Right.
And they still don't have his entire golf course just fully bubbled. He's still
Did he
only
even have-
personal security detail.
Did he even have a Secret Service detail at the original rally, or was that just DHS? Because I've heard.
So that you're about to go down the rabbit hole.
Okay,
Yes, but really limited. And then they've stepped it up some.
They
And
just took some Secret Service online test.
that sheriff said, I was reading an article where that sheriff, the theory that came from that sheriff is that DHS is leaking his moves to the FBI. What? And he just kind of leaves it open. Because, like you're saying, all of these people, all the active school shooters always have interactions with the FBI beforehand, right? It's just mind-blowing.
It is.
It's so obvious that you don't want to admit it to yourself. But his basic theory is, like, because of the DHS involvement with Secret Service, because Secret Service is so stretched thin right now, that it's Department of Homeland Security that's leaking Trump's moves to the FBI and then ultimately the FBI. And I just did that whole episode on the news last week, right?
Right.
Go check out the news.
Yep.
Where I explained, like, how the government will work like this. Like, the top two people inside these organizations are doing something very different than what the bulk of the organization is doing. The idea that a single person inside the DHS doesn't like a single political person and is giving information to another single person within the FBI, and then things like this are happening, it's totally feasible.
We
It's
find
totally
it
feasible.
a little odd as well that this the calm nature of how this guy was detained and arrested, essentially.
Is
I mean,
odd.
very calm. Like,
Yeah.
the guy left, got in his vehicle.
Was maintaining speed in
somebody took a
traffic and-
picture, maintaining the speed in traffic. They pulled him over. He was still very calm.
Yep.
For somebody that was running from the police, that just got done attempting an assassination on the president, The guy was just like, it was another fucking day that ended in Y, right?
Yeah.
That was the way the officers described it. Yeah, he was just very calm.
It could be you're seeing like that first little nugget of he's a patsy, right? Because this dude, on paper, he fits all kinds of wild stuff, like the criminal convictions, all these weird travels to Ukraine, the crazy book he wrote. Like, he's the perfect patsy.
Is the timing kind of fortuitous? I mean, 2013, that was immediately after presidential election. What else happened in 2013? I don't know. There was a ban on assault rifle in the assembly floor from Dianne Feinstein and whatever the other person's name was. That was
he
a part
also
of that bill.
voted for Trump, though. He voted for Trump in 2016.
But then why was he donating to Act Blue?
So from some of his writings that I was able to read online, his basic theory is that he was like conned into voting for the conservatives, for the right, for Trump in 2016. And when he realized the mistake he had made, that's what sent him down this road of anti-Trump. Yeah.
Kind of redemption in a certain...
I will say it's probably the first time I've ever seen one of these guys where they interviewed friends and family, where they didn't say, like, he was quiet and kept to himself. Like, his son was like, if my dad wants to be a martyr for this cause, then that's his decision to make. And his son was like, his son said, I hate Trump just like every other rational human being does. Like,
what? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Everyone around him is just as extreme, just as vocal as being extreme. Like, it could be that he was just calm as a cucumber because he's not balanced and didn't, you know what I mean?
And
he knew he was going to jail today. Like,
Or all of a sudden we start seeing interviews with him and he's like, I don't recall.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
or we're giving him way too much credit, and that he had no
nothing
planning
to do with
and
this.
nothing to do with this, and he was I'm not saying he wasn't there. I'm saying that we're just giving him too much credit. That he thought this out, he planned this out. I mean, like, more will be revealed. Like, where did he get the fucking AKM?
Yeah, it's really interesting to me though. It kind of confirms like a long running suspicion that there's this great. I can't remember his name right now. He's this gay black dude on Instagram, and he has the funniest reels where he goes through Starbucks and like reviews the Starbucks drinks. Okay. And he's always yelling about how the liberal Starbucks drinks are terrible. And his assumption is that all liberals suck at their job. Like, the way you can identify a liberal versus a conservative is conservatives are good at their job and liberals suck. The last two assassination attempts had wonderful opportunities. Everything was handed to them, and both times they just sucked. You know what I mean? Like, it fits, you know?
Right.
Any sort of an insight on why his social media accounts were closed down?
I would say from a law enforcement perspective, it makes good sense to pull that stuff off the internet and go through it. And you don't want public scrutiny. You don't want the media networks running away with it. Like, I get the official narrative.
Okay.
But it is odd to me that anytime you have an active shooter, or the last two to take shots at Trump, both times the federal government came out and said, like, oh, they have no active profile. And then immediately it's found out afterwards that's complete nonsense. And this guy, like, through the roof, complete nonsense. Like, he is a political activist and has been for an extremely long time.
Right.
And he's just all over the place with his views because he's just not stable.
Connect some dots for the viewers. What would his stake in Ukraine have anything to do with Donald Trump?
Trump has openly said he's going to end the war. So if you're, man, you can't have the sitting president of the United States, President Biden, come out and repeatedly, without failure, say that anyone who voted for Trump and Donald Trump himself are a direct threat to democracy, while also pushing the line that Ukraine is involved in a fight for their democratic freedom, which is they are not a democracy. Whether or not that fight is, this is not the format to go down, whether or not Ukraine is a valid fight or not, but they're,
right.
You are saying that if Donald Trump is to be elected, the people of Ukraine will be plunged into...
Right. And with this guy's dedication to that cause,
Not-
that could have potentially...
Right.
Not only, according to this, not only Ukraine, but also the United States of America.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Donald Trump started running in 2015, and from that moment on, he has been a direct threat to democracy. And then once he won in 2016, it wasn't just him; it was anyone that had voted for him, anyone that bought a MAGA hat. The entire MAGA movement is a direct threat to democracy. We have weaponized half of the country against the other half of the country, and it's cheap politics. And it's all cheap. It's not even cheap politics in a productive way. It's cheap politics so that they can just maintain their seat, so they can continue to wash money into their own pockets. They've sold our country so far down the road that we're taking shots at each other now. It's something bad comes from this. How do you rejigger our country and bond us back together at this point? Half the country believes that you can cut the balls off of little boys, and that's the most moral thing that we should be doing right now. Like, how do you rebond our country back together?
Right.
The rhetoric has gotten completely out of control, and there's responsibility for the rhetoric. If Trump supposedly is whipping his followers into a frenzy, then what is CNN doing? What is President Biden doing? What is Vice President Kamala Harris doing?
Right.
Like,
if Trump encouraged J6.
Right. What Don Lemon going on his show and saying the things that he does, like there is culpability here at some point. Then, if you're saying that Trump has culpability for January 6th, then there's a lot of culpability to go around on all these shootings.
For both attempts, yeah.
Yeah, there's culpability to go around for the American citizens that are setting themselves on fire in protest of what's happening in Gaza. That's
round robin. You have $1 billion if you're right, and you're probably not because we don't have all the information. If you were to guess and somebody said, hey, place a wager on what's actually going on here, now this is not what's happening. I want to let everybody know that's listening, like this is merely conjecture, it's merely hypothesis. But if you were to have thoughts on what was happening here.
I genuinely believe, and I am doing the research right now to try to prove it. I'm going to do like a long form version of the news. I genuinely believe that, dude, I'm about to say like a deep dive conspiracy theory here. I think that post World War II, the OSS would eventually become the CIA. And I think under President Eisenhower, that entire branch of the government was strengthened beyond his control, which is why he gives his final presidential address warning the country about the CIA and the defense contracting connection to the government. I think from that moment on, you can see an internal warring within the government to establish who is in control. The intelligence agencies and their picked person or the person picked by the United States. That's why you had shots at Reagan. That's why Nixon was terminally removed from his office with all of the deep throat conspiracy or the Watergate conspiracy. That's why there's shots at Trump. The warrior of the people, they all had the exact same policy prescription. And all three of them were removed from office or had shots taken at them. I think that what you're seeing is the head of that war coming to. I think our federal government has been warring amongst itself for 50, 60 years, and it's coming to a head now. All the proxy wars and everything else, I think all of that is a byproduct of the internal struggle. That's genuinely what I think. You're talking about investment groups that have more GDP than the rest of the world combined, warring amongst themselves within the U.S. The amount of money that we are talking about, this election, the amount of power and money that can swing with this election is more than has ever been seen in human history. And we're all supposed to just collectively act like it's not. It's just a regular run-of-the-mill.
Right.
You had Charles Schwab
good
come
old
out
Democratic
last week.
election.
Charles Schwab came out last week and said that if Trump is to win the election, that it threatens the global power of structure. That's a pretty bold statement.
That's deeply concerning.
That's deeply concerning. It's him saying, like, if he wins, our game is up.
Well, I don't want to eat bugs, so.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I really think that we're headed down a very dark road. And I don't think it's necessarily just World War. That's the thing that gets me all the time. If we have a civil breakdown inside the United States, it's immediately World War III, because we're the only guardrail for peace around the world. If we are all of a sudden thrown into a fight amongst ourselves, then there isn't resources to go outside, which means every bad actor on planet Earth immediately loses their minds. The amount of influence that would also be dumped into the United States in support of either side of that conflict would be mind-boggling also. We're the most important, largest country on planet Earth with the most amount of money being thrown around. If we have a hiccup here, it's going to matter. And we, like, as a country, we have to start taking it seriously.
And that's exactly where, like, my theory comes in, is where kind of yours doesn't necessarily end, but where you just ended speaking right now, is that there has to be something catastrophic to truly divide physically and emotionally this country within it. And if that meant that a current running president, of which has half of the United States support, is assassinated, then all hell will break loose. And we are all aware of that. So my theory is this is two of how many? Because it's not over yet.
No, it's not over yet.
If I were to place a bet, and I absolutely hope I'm wrong about this. This is not something that I'm looking forward to, but that, okay, well, we can't do it with a rifle. So what What are we going to do with now?
You
Now,
gotta-
is it
you have to go vote.
and is it
I
to
mean-
him or is it to the citizens of the United
Yeah.
States? And like you were saying, like the entire chessboard. Do we have another Pearl Harbor attack where just so conveniently all the
20 million
number one
Ameri-
shit?
20 million immigrants we have no idea of, hundreds of thousands of Chinese nationals, hundreds of thousands of Islamic extreme. Our own government flew 120,000 unvetted Afghans out of Afghanistan during the withdrawal into the United States, into Northern Virginia. And we know for a fact that the people responsible for vetting those who came through the gate into where the Marines were to load the planes were the Haqqani network. It was the Taliban telling us that these guys aren't Taliban, and we loaded 120,000 of them and flew them an hour and a half from Washington, D.C. into Northern Virginia. They lived where I lived.
Right.
That's
So at what
The
point
stage
in
is
time
set.
does a thing get planted? Does something go off? A bomb get detonated, blamed on the fucking wrong side, done so by part of the government saying, look, this whole thing about taking Trump out, obviously that would cause divisiveness. That would do the exact thing that they wanted to do, which is create a war within the United States. How do we go around that to maybe, if not create a war within the United States, but an external war, some way that allows our government to get involved in something even prior to the election? Because would it be fair to say that have we ever entered, and this is an actual question, have we ever entered into any sort of a conflict in which the incumbent, like where the United States were involved, in which the incumbent, that individual stays in power because are we going to stray from what we already know? Are we going to elect somebody new, or are we going to keep a status quo?
statistically no.
No.
Statistically, if we get
Statistically,
into
no.
a major conflict, the U.S. votes for who the incumbent is because it's just they've got a plan, they're doing their thing. And that's where our current timeline is very interesting. Is where is the president of the United States? You know, we all watched the Democratic Party have a coup internally on who would be the next running president.
Does that worry anybody that we don't have
Mind blowing to me. How is
fucking
there
president, an
anyone on the
operating
Democratic
president of the
side of the
United
aisle
States right now?
that's cool with that? If you voted for Biden and you said that you were going to vote for him again in 2024, your choice was removed without your choice. So democracy died as far as the DNC is concerned this year. And everyone's cool with that. And they're all cool with that because of a CNN news story about how Trump's a sexist
But it's not
or
the
a
first time the
racist or some
DNC
dumb
has done
shit.
something like that, right? Didn't they do that to Bernie Sanders and Hillary?
So the 2016 election, the Hillary Clinton camp just cut
He had the
Bernie
popular-
Sanders.
Bernie Sanders had the
They
popular
just cut
vote.
him off by the knees, and then they bragged about it afterwards. It's not like a conspiracy theory. Like
No.
they openly bragged about it afterwards, just like they did with removing Biden. As soon as they did it, they were openly on the news bragging about it.
Yeah.
And the same day that someone took a shot at Trump, Bernie Sanders released a video talking about how now is the time for action and like very extreme rhetoric about. He literally says Donald Trump and MAGA supporters are a threat to democracy. And that video releases the same day that there's a shot at him. You bear culpability in what you are driving our country into.
We will see you next time on Trinidad's of the Triangle? The Devil's Triangle of the News. I don't even know. Well, that's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
Man,
Until
I get
next time.
The news.
God, I need to sign off.
Yeah, I don't
What's
know.
the sign off going to be?
I say, remember, it's okay to be dangerous because man, the world's gonna need dangerous dudes here real soon. And
that.
can I throw some at the end of that?
Slap it.
If the world is to have a hiccup, if the United States is to have a hiccup, your number one priority is your family. That's it. And all of the law enforcement, everyone is going to be of the same mind and principle. You need to have a plan for your family. It's not about creating the boogaloo. It's not about creating some civil resistance. You need to get your family to a safe place, and then everything after that will work it out. But
We are
if this
going
goes
into
south,
it.
it's
We're
gonna go
just going
south.
into a weird, shit is, it's a tipping point right now.
You cannot convince me at this point that massive civil conflict / global conflict doesn't happen within the United States. We've never really truly been touched by this stuff, and our enemies are well aware of it. And our back door has been wide open for 4 years, while the very same people that are pumping people into our country through the back door have bought and paid for our politicians. Like the son of Joe Biden admitted in court, he took a plea deal that he did not pay taxes on bribery money from the Ukrainian government that was washed through Burisma oil directly from the CCP. So the son of the sitting president admitted that he didn't pay taxes on a bribe from our leading enemy in fucking court. It's where we're the government is not your friend, and it's going to get bad. It just is.
Yep.
It just is. They are trying to kill this man. at some point, they're going to stop trying to kill him and they're going to start trying to kill us. It just is what it is.
Yep.
I am sweaty filming this right now.
I know.
Because I don't like it, but I don't see any off-ramp from it.
None of us, by the way, I'll say it again, are sewer slidal.
No.
I will not.
No.
I will not attempt
Very happy to be
anything. I will not make an attempt on my own life. All right. Thanks for listening.
here. Yeah.